Welcome back to Vic's Projects. Now, I know what's on all your minds, and that is, how much money did I spend getting this engine rebuilt and doing all the stuff under the bonnet that we did? Well, in this video, we're going to find out that it's a lot. At this point, I think it's worth us kicking off with a bit of a recap of how we got here. Now, I've put all the videos in a separate playlist, so if you're new here, you can watch through from the beginning on this whole saga and how we've got to this point here. So, let's kick us off. We found out the engine was making some not so good noises. Now, to be honest, I knew this engine was on its way out. I knew it had been misbehaving for a while, so it was kind of on the cards. So obviously at that point we had to pull the engine and box out, send it away to get sorted. Whilst it was away, I took the opportunity to just strip back the engine bay, clean it all out, sort out some little bits of rust that had been annoying me for a while, and prep it all and paint it all so it looked all lovely and ready for when that engine went back in. Next bit was to install some shiny, lovely new brake lines. That was a whole new thing for me, never done that before, really enjoyed it. Good fun, and it's nice now looking in the bay with all those shiny new brake lines, fuel lines and clutch lines in there. Once she was back, we had to put that big old beast back in the heart of the cat, and that was pretty nerve-wracking, to be honest. Putting it in with all that shiny new fresh paint, all the stuff that I put in, shiny engine as well, didn't want to scratch anything, and it's a huge lump to try and move around. But we got her in. Then the arduous task of actually getting it started. Our ignition system was playing up, which turns out that was only the start of all our issues. And it was at that point I left the episode where we actually got it out on the road and driving. So that brings us back to the latest episode, which was sorting out the brake booster. That was a whole task that I didn't expect to have to do. And that really set the tone for the saga that then ensued. So, now the car's running, driving, starting to enjoy it, driving it around locally, just to the shops, taking the kids to swimming lessons, bedding the engine in slowly. I thought, okay, cool, little shakedown runs are done. We can take her now for a bit of a longer run. So took it to work, it's about a 20-mile round trip. On the way home, I started to hear some not very nice sounding noises coming from the engine bay area. I was like, oh no. Obviously super aware, hyper aware at this point of, things that are going on. So took it to a local car garage just to get an expert opinion, second opinion of what could this be. They said, Vic, nothing you've done. This sounds like it's within the gearbox or within the engine. Take it back to the guys who did it. So phoned up PK, they were super cool about it, just like, yep, don't worry, we'll fix it, we'll get it sorted, and you know what, things happen, and they were super cool about it. So car went on a truck. It's about 3-4 hours up to Nottingham. They then took it out, started the investigation. As part of their investigation, the silicone fluid that I put in the brakes actually killed the seals in the brakes, so I had to get charged for a whole new set of for the brakes to get sorted. Bit unfortunate that I had to pay someone else to do the labour, but hey ho, that's the way things go on that. The investigation led to, so they actually sent the gearbox back to the guys who rebuilt it. They outsourced that bit. They took the bottom end or the sump off the engine and looked around, gave all that the all clear. Gearbox got the all clear. The guy who did the gearbox said, now I've had a couple of these come back with people suspecting there's a problem. Did you order this particular clutch and put it in there? Which is quite a standard clutch to go and buy from a major manufacturer, a major distributor. They said, yeah, we did. They said, well, I think there's been a bad batch because I've had a few back and that clutch seems to be bad. So they ended up changing the clutch for me, putting it all back together, and now everything's fine. So one of those things, unfortunately, old cars, You know, the components for these are scarce. Not many manufacturers. You're going to get a bad batch or a bad one here or there. So no hard feelings. Just a complete shame that it happened. I got the train up there. Got the train up there to pick up the car and drive it all the way back. So, you know, it had to last that 4-hour run, drive back. Otherwise, the job's not done. It's not finished. Just as I went to pick it up, arrived at the train station, they had taken the car for a lap around the block. Alternator had packed up, which was my old alternator. So luckily they had one in stock. They fitted that for me, which, you know, thankfully I didn't want that failing on my drive back. So all that done, obviously I had to, you know, pay for the labour and pay for the alternator and all that. Drove her home. She drove fantastic. Drives like a flipping race car, sounds like a race car, super happy, but my God, what a saga. Hence, not very many videos. Well, this has been going on, work's been pretty crazy as well, but yeah, we're finally here. It's finally all up and running and driving, and I'm now starting to be able to enjoy the car. Okay, now's the time where we find out how much I've actually spent redoing all the engine and all the bits and pieces. And I recommend you get yourself a seat, get yourself a beer, because this one is going to be painful. First up is all the brake lines, fuel lines and clutch lines that we did. And that was £261. Next up was all the prep in the engine bay. So prepping all that, rust repair, painting, I had some powder coating done, some aqua blasting, and also some zinc plating to make a few things all nice and shiny. And that came to £445. Cooling system, that was £785. Just this radiator was 650 quid. Miscellaneous bits and pieces like the pedal box, 184. Shipping for the engine there and back, 220. Now we're getting into the bigger costs. So the gearbox and overdrive overhaul, 1,686. There's no point going through all this without doing some upgrades, and they came to 2,476. Now the big one, the main event. How much was it to overhaul the engine? £16,379. Oh. So that gives us a grand total of 22.5 grand. How on earth did I spend that? I bought the car for 12.5. So that's quite a lot of money to end up spending. Out of that 22.5, there was just over 20 grand in the engine and gearbox rebuild. The rest was all the other bits and pieces that we talked about. Now, the quote I got was around 16 grand. And I assumed there was going to be some overspend, so I budgeted about 18 grand to do those two. So we're 2 grand over and above that. What led to that? Well, I guess the engine and box were a little bit worse than we were kind of hoping that they would be. Oh, bike ahead. So they ended up costing a little bit more than we were hoping. But also it was right in the middle of that period of really, really high inflation, where inflation hit about 10%. So I don't know, it is where it is. That's where we've landed. Let me just get past this bike. So the big question, was it all worth it? Well, do you know what? Absolutely. So it is great to have all the drivetrain sorted. You've seen all the other videos where we've done all the other bits and pieces around the car, and now I can actually use it as a car, as my daily driver. So I took the kids to school, to swimming, sorry, this morning. I've just run some errands, picked up a few bits and pieces, and it's great. It's great not to have the car just sitting in the garage like it has been for a long time, with various bits and pieces that needed doing. So I am super stoked. Would I have liked to spend a little bit less money doing it? Of course, wouldn't anyone? But when all is said and done, you kind of forget about all that and just get to enjoy it. Now, what does the engine feel like? Well, she pulls like an absolute train. Sounds a beaut, really crisp engine note. Yeah, super happy having had all that work done. Stuck in traffic at the minute, but also, as I said, we're still bedding the engine in. Done 600 odd miles so far, so the piston rings are mostly there. We'll drop the oil when we get to about 1,000 miles, refresh all of that, and then we're good to go and start opening the taps properly. But I'm going to call it here. I'm just going to continue enjoying my classic car. I suggest you go out and do the same. That's why you've got it in the first place. So you do that, I'll do this, and we'll see you next time on Vic's Projects. No, not happy with that take. I'm gonna have to take that again.